our guest tonight, John Robinson, is a clinical psychologist with a second doctorate in ministry. He's an ordained interfaith minister and author, husband and father, which started writing books about psychology and spirituality in midlife when he started to age. He sensed that growing older continues the same unfolding transformation of consciousness that has begun with midlife. More than that, he realized that aging itself offers the highest levels of spiritual realization, and that if we understand and surrender to its powerful energies, we can gain a lot of inner wisdom and peace. His book, The Three Secrets of Aging, describes these energies as initiation, transformation, and revelation, and he argues that they are intrinsic to the natural aging process. Moreover, as advances in medicine and nutrition and public health increase, and the average lifespan by nearly 30 years, he believes that we are now witnessing the unfolding of an entirely new stage of life. With the hope of making his vision of aging more accessible and more fun, he wrote bedtime stories for elders, what fairy tales can teach us about the new aging, drawing on 10 old and new fairy tales from around the world, and he invited older folks, just like himself, to discover the three secrets of aging in symbolic parables. You can find out more about John Robinson, his practice, and his written works at www.johnrobinson.org. Good evening, John. Welcome to the show.
Brenda, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Boy, we had that snafu. We tried to have you on before, and we were all so disappointed.
I think my energy may have short-circuited things.
Oh, my goodness. Well, you've definitely found, obviously, some sort of fountain of youth here, you know?
Yeah.
And I was saying to my co-hosts, it's kind of a subject that people always think about, they want to know more about, but they're almost afraid to broach this subject. So I'm really, really, I would have to say, date myself, I'm real stoked to talk about this tonight.
Good. Yeah, for so many people, it's either too scary or too depressing or too far in the future to think about. And so you ask somebody, what do you think about aging? Their eyes glass over and they kind of look away. But it comes toward us as a profound opportunity for personal and spiritual growth that if we can just begin to open our hearts to, will change our way of life forever.
And that is something that I think that it really helps a lot of people, because they tend to get depressed when they think, oh my God, I have all these aches and pains and I'm getting older and all that kind of stuff. What inspired you in the beginning to write this? Was there an incident that happened personally that inspired you to write these books?
Oh, yeah. So here I was in my mid-50s, cranking along as a clinical psychologist, probably working way too hard, seeing 10 or 12 people a day and so forth. And then one day my heart gave out, and it just kind of gave into what's called atrial fibrillation, where the top chamber races too fast. I went to the emergency room, and the guy said, well, you need to be defibrillated. That's with the paddles to the chest. And so he shocks me. And over the next few months, and actually next several years, I began to re-experience body memories of an open heart surgery that I had when I was 14 as a kid to correct a congenital defect. This re-experiencing was so intense that after about a year and a half, I said, I can't work anymore. I can't work and get well. So I gradually closed down my practice and left the field. And it was an enormous change for me. Looking back on it, I said that it was also a tremendous gift. My time in psychology really needed to end. My what I had learned there was finished. I needed to go forward. And so what I did was I went back to school, went back to a doctorate in ministry, and went to an interfaith seminary and was ordained. And I've always been interested in spirituality, so it gave me a chance to explore all these sort of untapped or unfinished interests of mine and to really come back and reinvent myself. These are the kind of opportunities that happen to us.
That is so interesting. When we're going like 50 million miles a minute and we're killing ourselves with work, the universe has a way sometimes of just throwing that monkey wrench in there, and then you've got to stop. You've got to take a look around.
It gets into your body and makes you pay attention.
Exactly. So, you talk a little bit about the baby boomer generation, and what differs between their thoughts of spirituality and the spiritual development going on today. What are your thoughts on that about the baby boomer generation and how they differ from
Well,
today's spirituality?
the boomers have always been very spiritually oriented and the seekers. I mean, they were fascinated by Eastern psychology and all sorts of New Age kinds of practices and belief systems. And so they're coming into aging now with this great optimism that, like everything else, they can overcome it with exercise or attitude or diet or anti-aging creams or whatever. And I think one of the problems is that when you're between 65 and 70, you still feel so good you think it's going to work. And then somewhere down the line you realize it doesn't work that way. You really do have to deal with aging. So I think the boomers are profoundly interested in this process. It's just that the view we have of getting old is so grim based on, hundreds of years ago when you really did drop dead in your midlife years or maybe in your 50s, if you even got that far. And in any case, if you got that far, your life was miserable. Now, my gosh, we live until, if you reach 65, you've got a good chance, like a 70, 80% chance of getting to 85. And the question then is, what do we do with all these extra years? Do we just sit around and wait to get old, or do we begin to ask ourselves much more profound questions like, what is being asked of us here? What is the gift of these years, and what is our new purpose as spiritual elders in the world? This transforms everything. It transforms aging from being just old people, and old people aren't necessarily enlightened. You don't get wise just by getting old. You have to do this inner work. But if you do the inner work, it suddenly gives your life an entirely new focus. You get to leave the rat race of the middle years and with vision and wisdom see a different kind of world and a different kind of opportunity to serve the world. So it's really pretty exciting.
I really like that. It's almost like a return to the old ways where the
Yeah.
elders were respected for what they knew.
Yes. Yeah. We've lost sight of the value of elders, and we've lost sight of the initiation of elders. We in indigenous tribal cultures, you initiated adolescents and you initiated elders so they could more easily move from their roles in the middle years of hunting and providing and child rearing and so forth to these more wisdom roles of the later years. And it helped them cross that line. They became closer to the ancestors, closer to the spiritual world, and they had now a new purpose in their lives. We need to do that again now in this culture because we're so youth-oriented. We've forgotten that the latest technology does not bring wisdom. It just brings more information.
It absolutely doesn't. And we just push our elders off and forget about them like they're a burden. And, but they've lived so long, especially if you think about like someone who grew up in the 30s, perhaps was even born in
Yeah.
the 30s, what they've seen from then to now, and all the things that they can, impart to us. Um, you spoke about different ceremonies and rituals and stuff, and I really don't know what's available in the man-made religions, but I know that in some of the earth-based religions, they still do, especially for women, what's called, at age 60, what's called the croning or the wisdom stage. And, I'm all for bringing back something like that. You have to be celebrated for at least making it to 60, don't you think?
Well, yeah, and I think women have always been a little bit better at taking care of themselves than men. But I think for men, it's really about coming together as men to share this experience and to talk about what it feels like to give up identity and purpose and all that stuff of the middle years and begin to question more deeply, well, why are we still here? You can't do it alone, but everything is changing. And so what we really need are kind of rites of passage that honor the changes that are already happening and help men find their new gifts. Because you're born in the world with a whole set of important and really divine gifts, and then you open them at different times in life, particularly around midlife. But then later in life, you've got another chance to open untapped reservoirs of consciousness, of wonder, of service. It's just that we feel so thrown away that we don't think we have anything left to give. But if we learn how to initiate each other as men and to provide and to see each other's gifts and talents and creativity, then this kind of ritual occurs almost by itself. And then
Now,
you have a new concept.
do you yourself put together like support groups or any type of
Yeah,
rituals or well, not necessarily rituals or tools that people can, like in your books, that people can,
sure.
kind of ascribe to discover all this stuff?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, the material I put in my books is to explain what's happening, and then the community needs to create forms of blessing that help people, men and women, come through these stages. What I've done in particular is to bring together older men into groups so they can begin to mentor each other, to teach each other, to learn from each other what this new stage of life's all about. Uh, what I did personally was that in going to school and the interfaith seminary, when I finally was ordained, the ordination process was so profound because here I was once a psychologist. Now I'm a minister being blessed for an entirely new kind of vision, and it was so beautiful to be standing in front of 100 or so family, friends, colleagues in the audience, giving a sermon about what mattered most to me, and then being seen. These are the critical elements of initiation into elderness, and I got to experience it. So I'm trying to help other men and groups come together and do the same thing.
That is really wonderful. What do you feel about these, like the Freemasons and the Knights of Columbus and all these associations, as far as like, places for like retired or elder men together? Do you think these are supportive for some of these types of rites of passage into aging?
Well, Brenda, that's a good question, but I don't really know enough about them to answer it with any kind of real authority. If the thing is, I mean, they are rich resources for esoteric knowledge and community. Whether they move, how far an individual can move in consciousness through them
Mm-hmm.
really is what will determine whether they're real initiations. It's the awakening of consciousness. It's the beginning to dissolve the ego. It's not about me anymore. It's about this other consciousness that I dwell in. It's not in me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in it. And as I understand that, I begin to experience the world differently. Any group that can support that sort of transition will be doing great work.
Now, do you feel that sometimes, like people who are aging, who are getting older, that they resist kind of opening up spiritually and kind of fall back on the crutches of like something that, they were told, some dogma they were told in the past, and it's hard to get through to them?
Sometimes. I mean, it really depends. I think we age as we've lived, and if we were rigid, then we're probably going to be rigid into our old age. And if we've always been seekers, we're going to be seeking into our old age. All we can really do is invite everybody to try to transcend their belief systems, because as you age, it's no longer about orthodoxy. It's not about what you should or shouldn't believe or what you think is going to happen. It's about living in the moment, in the present, in a way that expands your consciousness. Then this new kind of spirituality bubbles up inside of you almost by itself.
I really like that, living in the moment. It's difficult to do though, don't you think? I mean, it's difficult to do that because you're so conditioned to think, well, I got to think ahead, I got to do this, I got to be prepared, and I've got these
Yeah,
plans, and
yeah.
it,
But
it
that's
would
one
really
of the
take some
great gifts of
control.
aging. That's one of the great gifts of aging. It's hard to do in the middle years when you've got kids to raise and bills to pay and jobs to get to and a million things to do. But when you step away from that, and that's the first phase of this, when life initiates you into this different time of life, it slows down. You become happier. You become more aware. You don't have to race anywhere really. And so you begin to look at the world as if for the first time, or perhaps the first time in many years. And you begin to notice how extraordinarily beautiful it is. You begin to feel new energies in yourself. And you live in the moment because it's so much more gratifying and joyous. It doesn't
And live,
become hard as much.
and so living in the moment could, push back a little bit. Wouldn't you think that fear of death,
Oh,
because you're
yeah.
not looking
Yeah.
ahead towards that?
Yes. when you live in a moment, what that's really saying is that you're living in a consciousness without thought, and it's thought that generates these terrible fears of death. Dread about what will happen afterwards, dread about what you've been told along the way.
Or
But
your
when
health.
you're just present, then without thought, all this stuff dissolves, and you kind of step into an awakened consciousness that's not too concerned about death.
Okay, and do you feel that women are more apt to embrace this than men? Or do you think it's kind of even?
Well, I think it's just different. It's primarily different. Particularly with the retirement phase, I think women have been much more comfortable with multitasking, kids, school activities, jobs, changing jobs, so forth, where men have been more linear and single focused. And I think what happens is they become way too identified with who they've been. And when they retire, or when that is no longer relevant, it's a real retirement crisis for them. That's one of my missions in life, is to get guys to let go of who they used to be and trust that they will find out a whole new self that's been waiting to happen for 30 or 40 years. So I think it's rockier for men, but they'll deny it. An awful lot of guys will say, "How you doing?" And they'll say, "I'm fine. I play golf all the time. I've never been busier. I'm never happier." But then you talk to their wives, and it's not quite the same. They're running the household like a CEO, and their wife wishes they'd go out and find something to do, because they're really not in touch with themselves yet.
That's very fascinating, and it's so true, because and I've noticed with some of my clients and family and stuff that when they get to that certain age, there are blocks that arise around them that actually prevent them from continuing to do what they used to do. And so they're almost forced to go into some sort of new identity or recreate themselves.
Right. And the problem is that so many guys try to recreate themselves in the old form. So they'll go out and they'll start up a new business, or they'll play golf as if it was a national campaign or something. and so instead of creating anything new, they just recreating the past, and that only works for so long. And then depression kicks in, and it turns out depression can be a pretty useful thing, because it's the way your soul is saying, "Hey, listen, you're betraying me. This is not what I'm here for right now. It's not about accomplishment and ego anymore. It's about something else. And I'm feeling like you don't pay attention to me." So depression is an invitation for them to listen more deeply to who they are and to find this other way of life.
And is this all in your book, Three Secrets of Aging? All these little nuggets?
Yeah. The nuggets about men are in a book that's coming out this year, actually, called What Aging Men Want. The Odyssey is a Parable of Male Aging. And you can learn more about that on my website, johnrobinson.org. But I took, Robert Bly did this great book from midlife called Iron John. I don't know if you remember it, but it was very successful. And men of my generation, just took to it like crazy, because it was a way of looking at how to find an authentic life. These same men are now in their 60s, and they're just, bouncing off the walls. They don't know what to do with themselves. And the Odyssey, this guy Odysseus has been at the war. And all men really experience life, and particularly work, as a war, whether they say it or not. And then he's trying to leave the war, and it takes him 10 years to come home, because it's not so easy. And every task that he addresses on the way home, these various fights and experiences he has, everything from the Cyclops to the Sirens, are symbolic of the things he needs to understand in order to discover love, in order to drop back into a place where he can love without accomplishment. So anyway, the stuff
is
about
that
men is
self-love or love of
forthcoming book.
family or romantic love, or just the whole love, the whole feeling of love?
It's both. It's about being able to come home to the people you love without, needing to change them, without, needing to do anything else but open your heart. And it also has to do with opening your heart to the universe, to the children, to your grandchildren, to the animals, to everything. And
without being stressed out like, oh, I've got to do this, and I've got to make this money, and all this.
Right, without a schedule, yeah. So
it's very interesting. It's very interesting that what's going on now with the economy is almost forcing a lot of men to reinvent themselves, because those high-powered, high-pressure jobs are no longer, they're dwindling.
Right, yeah. And they're no longer relevant to men anyway, to older men.
Right.
Men don't know.
Right.
Yeah, men are on a different path now, and they haven't realized that yet.
And what is that path, do
So,
you think?
well, it's a path of learning. You see, we've been so one-sided. It's been about accomplishment and conflict and competition and conquest and overcoming, and battling and all that kind of stuff. And that's the warrior's life. We've been trained biologically and culturally to be these warriors. So when the war's over, we don't know what to do with ourselves. It's that kind of struggle about how to come home from the war. And that's why I love this book I wrote, What Aging Men Want, because it's like what they really want is to learn how to come home, which is to say to love, to be peaceful, to be creative, to open up depths of creativity that they haven't paid much attention to because they were so busy, fighting the good fight. We've got usually about, when I was born, the lifespan was about my current age. So by about now, I'd be getting my golden watch, and a year or so later, I'd be dead. But I've got another 15 years. And so I have this wonderful chance to love in a way that I never had time for before. So it's just a wonderful space. So we need to help change men and women's attitudes about aging. It's not about grim. It's not about getting old and ugly and useless. It's about awakening consciousness. Aging is enlightenment in slow motion. Identity disappears, your mind slows down, you begin to wake up more. It's as if the stuff you had spent 20 years in meditation trying to accomplish begins to happen by itself in this new phase. It's absolutely extraordinary.
And it would benefit women to read this book about men as well, because they don't understand. I hear a lot from women like, oh, he's just sitting around the house and he's got this attitude and I can't deal
Right.
with him. Once the men
Yeah.
retire and, they're sitting in front of the TV with a clicker because they don't know what else to do.
You're exactly right. And the thing is that women cannot fix men, and women cannot, solve
No,
this
they can't,
problem.
but
Even
they
though
want
keep
to.
trying to
You
fix
know
their
that,
husband.
John. They want to.
They won't. I know. It ain't going to work. Only men can fix men. I think that's one of the great gifts that older guys need to learn. When you're driving past Starbucks in the morning and you see a group of about 6 guys just sitting there in their 70s, yakking away about stuff, that's where the healing is. That's where the real authentic masculinity begins to come forward again. They love each other. Whether or not they can say it, they will do anything for each other, and they don't want to fight. Men's groups, and particularly older men's groups, are never about conflict. They're about friendship.
Companionship and doing things together and common interests and the good old days, right?
The good old days, but also that run out of steam because the good old days are gone. And so one of the steps of initiation for men in these years is to move from dwelling on the past to living in the present and what they want to do in the present. And so many want to find. I have a friend who was a well-known religious leader for many, many years, and suddenly he's fallen in love with a horse. He found a cult, and he began to.
Oh, that's so
spend time
easy to
with the
do.
cult.
Trust me, I have 4 of them.
Well, it may not be easy to do for a high energy, compulsive male, but this friendship with this horse is completely changing him because the horse doesn't care what he thinks. He's not impressed with him at all. So it gives him a new kind of an outlet.
That is really neat. I really love to hear that. And so what are these 3 secrets? Or have we been talking about them all along?
In effect, we have. The first one, initiation, is about this. The events and processes of aging, which are things like changing bodies, fading identities, and all sorts of losses, you're just not who you used to be, initiate us into a new stage of life unlike any other. And in effect, whatever shocks you into realizing that everything has changed is your initiation. It could be retirement or joint pain or senior discounts or new prescriptions or your image in a photograph, which is kind of scary. But suddenly you get that everything's changed and that you have left this old world of middle-aged goals and competitive values for a completely new and unknown land, and you don't know what to do with it. And so that's the step one. It's like something pushes you across the threshold. You may realize that an old life has ended, but a new life is staring you in the face, and it's just amazing. So then comes transformation. Aging is a transformation of body, self, and consciousness. So the body part is obvious. We look in the mirror and everything sags and looks different, and it becomes less and less important. But more importantly, we surrender this old identity, my career, my schedule, my roles, my sense of importance, so forth. The self also changes, and so no longer caught up with these accomplishment values of the middle years, we have the freedom to do something altogether different, what we want to do. So the growth possibilities of this time become amazing. Jung would tell us that the self, with a capital S, is constantly pushing up from the bottom, like lava in a volcano, pushing for individuation, for us to grow ourselves in the way we were meant and spiritually intended to grow. And so with the new time, some men may get into woodworking, some men may read poetry, some men may want to study religion like I did. There's a whole range of things they can do that allow them to move forward and to grow a new self. But more important, or equally as important, with the dissolution of their identity and everything that goes with it, they begin to become more conscious of consciousness itself. It's like you wake up and you become aware that you're aware. Well, the mystics from all the traditions tell us this is the beginning of enlightenment. And for men, when they don't have all these distractions pulling them down every odd road, they begin to discover that consciousness is not in them, they're in it, and it is divine, and it is not their consciousness. So that kind of discovery begins to awaken the ability to see the world in a new way. So this is the transformation part. Everything about you begins to change. Your looks, your body, your mind, yourself, but in a way that is full of new opportunities. This is why we can't go back to the old model where we just ossify into a sort of rigid structure sitting on the porch in our rocking chairs. There's a whole new adventure in consciousness waiting for us. And then the third stage is revelation. So aging is a revelation of a new and sacred world all around us. As we leave the rat race and slow down, we finally stop and, smell the roses. We discover that the world is far more amazing and beautiful than we had ever had time to see. So this is why we begin to spend so much time with our grandkids and our friends and our pets and our garden and our world, because we just finally see the extraordinary beauty that's everywhere around us. And then the expansion of consciousness I've been talking about allows us to see the world in a way that suddenly it's brighter and more beautiful and, in fact, kind of luminous and very spiritual. We discover that we were never kicked out of the garden. We left the garden as young men and women to make this life, which is the left hemisphere kicking in with all of its belief systems. And as that dissolves in aging, we move more to right hemisphere consciousness, which is, wow, this place is pretty amazing, and this place is infinitely precious, and I love the space I'm in right now. And so we begin to see that heaven on earth never left. It's always been here. In fact, I wrote a book about that, too, called Finding Heaven Here, where I listed like about 100 folks from across religions and eras who said to us very clearly, heaven is here when you're awake enough to see it. It's not just in the next world. It seems to be the best kept secret on the spiritual path because nobody pays attention to that. If we realized where we were, there'd be no room for fighting, that nobody would need to fight. But this is the kind of coming home that men and women can have as they age if they're willing to work on themselves. They'll find a world that is already divine and spectacular all around them that opens their heart naturally. You just can't help but love it.
So tell us about all these written works. Now, the book, your book, The Three Secrets of Aging, now that's already out. Is that available everywhere, right? Amazon, John Hunt Publishing, or?
Right. Yeah, it's available everywhere. Publisher, online bookstores, regular bookstores, and the book Bedtime Stories for Elders about what fairy tales can teach us about the New Age. That's also available right now. Finding Heaven Here has been out for a few years. The new book, What Aging Men Want, will be out in a couple months.
Are you going to go through John Hunt for that? Are you going to be going? Is that same publisher? Or?
Yeah, he's the publisher for that too. Yeah.
Oh, good. That's a great publisher. That's how I found you, because I'm an author on one of his authors. So.
I know that. So I think we're all on the same page for the possibilities of his company. of really
Oh,
supporting the authors
definitely,
that do
definitely.
vision.
So, um, now as far as like resistance and people, because there's so many people, I mean, they get so caught up in their day-to-day living and living in the moment is such a big challenge for people, especially as we get
Yeah.
older. I hear people say it all the time, and you're right. If you live in the moment when you're like young or middle-aged, people are going to think you're nutty because you're not in touch with reality. Don't you believe that the amount of freedom in getting older, there's just a whole new era of freedom if you just kind of look at it that way. Even if you do have
Yes.
responsibilities, you have a lot more freedom on different levels, don't you think?
Well, well, yes. I mean, the empty nest is actually a place of freedom. So suddenly the kids are taking care of themselves and their kids. So you have all that space. When you finally leave the workplace, you've got all that space. Some of the great gifts of aging are the sense of freedom now to do things that you never had time for before. I don't know where I was going with that. But anyway, I think freedom and
Was that a senior moment? Oh, I never say that. No.
yeah,
Even that within itself, we become a little more psychic women, I think, in our wisdom
yeah,
stage after 60, and even as we're in our 50s, I think we just get so fine-tuned as a psychic. And
yes.
a psychic in my 50s. I mean,
You don't have to try very hard.
pardon me?
You don't have to try as hard.
Oh
You
no,
know,
it's automatic.
I know
It's
where I
like
was going.
breathing.
You don't care what other people think as much. You know, the importance of your ego gratefully disappears a lot. So, I don't care what people think. I just know what I like, and I know what I can do and what I want to do, and so you have this great sense of freedom and imperturbability, you might say. There's more diversity in the aging population than at any other time in our development. So that the range of attitudes and bodies and interests and aptitudes and so forth is wider than any other time in our lifespan.
And now that you mentioned that, it's really very profound because the younger set, they're always trying to be in the same trends together, do all the same kind of stuff that everybody else does.
Right.
So the individuality really comes out once you don't care about what people think about you anymore.
Exactly. Individuation is just another word for eccentricity. You get to be anything you want to be. It's a wonderful freedom.
So, what are some of your messages that you would give somebody who's really fearful of this next stage and say they're living alone and say that they don't have many friends, and how would they reach out and start to, experience finding their new enlightened self, their aging enlightened self?
It's so, you can't do aging alone. That's just one of the big lessons. You can't. Isolation is just one of the most dangerous things when we get older. So it's like when we get older, friendships become our new family. I mean, the kids call us and we're with them at holidays and we do various things, but friendships become so much more of what gives you the love and support through these years very often. So I would encourage people to find each other, find other people, whether it's at senior centers or in clubs or book clubs or online or any place, but get together with other people and start sharing your experience. And then you want to do, once that starts, you want to do all the different kinds of things that are growth promoting, from meditation to looking at your dreams to going into therapy. There's no reason not to be in therapy in your 70s. I mean, Freud was an idiot because he thought that people got rigid and didn't do anything new in their 70s. And Jung understood that this is a time of the greatest individuation. So,
okay. Well, we need to pause for just one moment for
sure.
1 minute for a commercial. We'll be right back, okay?
Yep.
A new era in psychic services has begun. PsychicAccess.com. You can connect with our psychic advisors by telephone or chat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of our psychic advisors are interviewed, fully verified, and accuracy tested, assuring you quality service. We're living in some very troubled times right now. More and more, the world's problems are affecting us on a personal level. You don't have to deal with this alone. Our highly accurate psychics, caring advisors, and talented mediums can help with situations you are currently experiencing and can let you know what the future may hold for you. All new customers get a free 6-minute reading. All you have to do is register. Why not visit us now and get a free reading at psychicaccess.com.
Okay, we were talking about a little bit about not being alone and when you're going through this whole aging process and what would be the best way for people who are living alone and kind of abandoned by their families and it happens so much. I remember with my husband and when his mother was retired and she was by herself because she had been divorced for many years, and it was always such an effort for everybody who was busy to come by and see her. And what would have helped her, I think, would be to have friends and she had none like that. And I think in many ways that contributed to, her state of health, don't you think?
Oh yeah. Isolation breeds depression, breeds illness. I mean, it reduces the immune system. It's a downward sequence of agents, and it's just not. You got to have friends. You got to reach out to people. That's the most important thing in the whole world. I think one of the things that we have a lot of misconceptions in our middle years about how it's going to be and how we're going to, our kids are going to be around all the time and we're going to be, having every Sunday with them and blah, blah, blah. They're too busy. And they have their own life, and we have to ask ourselves, did I do that with my parents? Did I come over all the time and brought the kids over on holidays? I helped out when I could. But, it's kind of a shock to an aging person to realize that that's not where the future lies. And even your grandchildren who think you walk on water are going to get to become adolescents and have their see you for 10 minutes, be glad to see you, and then get in the car and drive away. You've got to find a new life for yourself, and that involves friends and new outlets. Join a quilt circle. Take classes and things at the junior college, so that you can begin to have creative outlets. The self still wants to express itself.
That is such great. I hope people listening to this really take note of that, because there's so many people just and then they just get sucked into the TV, and that's their whole life.
The TV is so hypnotic, and you actually think Brian Williams is your friend after a while, but it's not going to work that way.
So the wisdom stage for men and women, so we talked a little bit about the definition about what it is differently and in defining it. Like for the men, do you feel it's mostly about finding their identity and their purpose and no longer being the warrior that they were? But what is your thoughts about women? Would you think that it's something about they have to find something beyond nurturing, or is it nurturing themselves?
Yeah.
What would their focus be?
Yeah, I think like men's tasks have to do with this overcoming or letting go of this conquering, questing business. Women who tend to be, at least historically, more caretakers and comforters and so forth, get kind of caught in that, and in their aging, wish they could do something else, but keep being drawn back into taking care of the grandkids or always fixing Thanksgiving dinner or something or other like that, and they become, the risk is codependency. I mean, this is what's expected of me. I don't want to disappoint anybody. I got to do it. It's always been my job. Blah blah blah. And they don't make space for themselves. I think a women's group would be great for any aging women, whether it takes place around the housing thing or just as a pure group or as a spirituality
or the Red
group,
Hat Society.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you know what? They're doing something, right?
Yeah. You get to complain to each other about how the kids don't pay any attention, and you find out everybody feels the same way. And instead of feeling guilty,
or how they've come back to live at home at 35.
Yeah. Well, there's that part too. But they're not coming back to see you.
Oh, it's kind of sad. I do want to add, though, that every city has women's clubs, And they're
Yeah.
very supportive. They do a lot of altruistic stuff.
The risk here, volunteer work is good and is good for people, but it's, in some sense it's overrated because the impression from AARP and other places is that everybody should do that. And it works for some people and it doesn't work for others. And if it's not working for you, it's important you don't feel guilty about that, but ask yourself, well, what would make me happier?
Right.
Maybe I want to write poetry, you know?
Maybe or do stained glass or something.
Yeah.
And so what do you think about the role of pets during this thing? Like, I mean, I see a lot of older people, they've never owned a pet before. They get an animal companion after they retire. And you talked about your client with his horse. This is part of it, right?
Pets are wonderful. I think pets are wonderful. I think they extend the life, all of our lifespans. Pets do. I mean, it's, you know, first of all, because it's another being to relate to, and it really is a relationship, it really is communication and love, and secondly, because it gives you something to take care of, to care for. There's research that says, you know, you put plants in elderly people's rooms in retirement communities and tell them they're responsible for them, and they begin to pick off the dead leaves and water them just right and fertilize them, we all need to be engaged in life. To be warehoused is the worst thing in the world. So pets, plants, caring for other people, these are the ways that we stay vitally involved. Eric Erickson, a wonderful psychoanalyst, his last book was called Vital Involvement in Old Age, and that really says it all. You don't pack up and go. You stay involved.
The gardening would be probably something really awesome to do, especially like organic gardening. I know my father got into that when he was older. Organic gardening. He got into gardening. He was growing things.
Yeah. Growing things is wonderful.
It didn't always turn out, but most of the time it did.
It's not the outcome that's the love, you know, the process. But, you know, we always have to keep discriminating. Am I doing this because I said I would, or because I should, you know, because I said I'm committed, or does it genuinely make me happy? Do I do it because I can't not do it? I like it so much. So all along we have to, because your interests change, and so you do something for a couple of years, and then just because you've been volunteering at the church for 2 years doesn't mean you have to do it for the rest of your life. It may mean that your soul is calling you to another kind of activity.
And how does a person find that? I mean, that is the question I always get. You know, I really know I need to be doing something, and I really want to do something, and I don't know what it is, and can you point me in some directions, and this and that. And then when you see something, they go, oh no, I can't do that. Like perhaps they're afraid to do it. It probably has to be something that they feel comfortable with to begin with, right?
You're so right. And we are our own worst enemies around this. We want to do something, and then we quickly say, oh, I couldn't do that. And it's like writing. Writing is one of those wonderful things older people can do, because it's not a big physical task. And you write your memoirs, you write poetry, or you just write
journaling, even journaling.
Journal, exactly. It's not hard. And they say, oh, I couldn't write. I'm not able to do that. You write, I don't write. And that's just not true. So we just need to keep lulling people into doing things like that to give expression to themselves. You know, you can also, there's a lot of wonderful journal exercises that you can do to find your passion again. You know, look at the stepping stones of your life, for example. Do some historical work and take a look at where in your life you felt most excited, most creative, most enthusiastic. Enthusiastic is a word that means being in God. So it sort of means that inspired, almost cosmic sense of, I love what I'm doing. When you look at two or three of those times, you begin to, or look at the people that you've admired in your life and see what they were doing. These are all hints at your own latent talents or abilities or callings that you still have plenty of time to enact. You know,
so it could all come full circle. You could be doing something in your youth you really, really enjoyed and come back to it in your elderly years.
Yeah, there's a lot of unfinished creativity and more. And so that's why a group is important, because your best friends will say to you, hey, look, get off your ass and do it. That's the fun.
That's
You've been wanting
good.
to
I
all
like
these
that.
years.
And it's true. They need, and a lot of people need that kind of kick. They need that kick
Yeah,
in the butt to get them going because they don't have confidence. If in their
right.
abilities to, oh, I can't do that.
And
I
they
could be
won't
a
listen to their
failure,
kids.
blah, blah,
So
blah. But you only are going to be judging yourself.
right, right. And it can't come from your kids because you don't believe them anyway. So it's better that it comes from your friends.
Yeah,
And
you're not
people
going to
don't know.
believe you won't believe your daughter. You won't believe your family. It's just
That's for
like
sure.
kids not listening to their parents. I mean, if it comes from anybody else, they'll believe it, right?
Right, yeah, much more likely. Uh-huh.
I don't like
So
to
it's
call it
about
the
being
elderly
in,
stage. I'd like to call it the wisdom stage. And I really think that, what do you think about that? That's more, it's got more dignity to it.
oh yeah, but you don't get wise just by being old. You've got to do this inner work that transforms you, that transforms who you are to this new kind of person. So, elders might think, well, I'm supposed to be wise, but I don't have anything to say. That's because they really haven't cultivated their own inner garden. They haven't nourished it. So, getting in a group, there's a lot of groups that have to do with reminiscing and personal growth in the elderly years, and I would say join one. At the first one you can find in every big city. I'm sure you'll find them because they're becoming more popular. Then you'll have an opportunity to do all of these things: journal exercises, dreams, regular exercise, sharing your story, and you'll come back to life. Then you'll be wise. That's when you get to be wise.
Well, you can only hope that if you live so many years, you've got to learn something. And, the wisdom stage, I know in some belief systems, especially in the earth belief systems, is supposed to be a teaching stage. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. That's at the mentoring stage.
a mentoring, teaching, the whole bit. So there's just so much more that they have to give, but they just don't
Yeah.
realize it.
And and many people really do want to mentor. They just don't know how to get started and who might want to receive your mentoring. And it's hard to find a younger person who's not so busy that they say, "Would you like to spend some time?" And they say, "I'd love to, but I don't have any." So you have to kind of cultivate these mentoring relationships with people. Just by paying attention to them, asking them questions, expressing interest, and little by little. All of us have needed guidance from older people. We just didn't know how to ask, didn't know we were allowed to ask. So this building bridges between the older folks and the middle generations is so important. It's easy to do with grandkids because they are in a conspiracy with grandparents. They're all breaking the rules together. But middle-aged people don't feel like they have a right to ask.
And so finding these groups, how would one get in touch with these groups in these big cities? Are they like, community like centers
Well,
or?
yeah, community centers, senior centers, probably mental health centers as well, schools, junior colleges. Just Google. There's a wonderful rabbi named Rabbi Dr. Shalomi who wrote a book called From Aging to Saging. And he has dozens of exercises in there that people are now using more and more in these kinds of senior center groups. Art is especially good, because we become young again when we become creative. So, they're out there. Just don't give up and start. The worst thing you can do is put it off.
Flop down in front of the TV and sit on the couch.
Yeah, shoot the TV. It's not your friend.
Shoot that TV. Well,
yeah.
Well, this has been so fascinating, and I feel like we could talk about all this stuff forever and ever. But first, before we end the show, I'd like you to tell the audience about the names of all of your books and where they can get them, and because you have one that's upcoming. Could you tell
Sure.
us about your written
The place
works?
to get all this, the place to get this information is www.johnrobinson.org, O-R-G. And the books that are most relevant to aging are What Aging Men Want, Bedtime Stories for Elders, and The 3 Secrets of Aging. The ones before that are also wonderful, and they had to do more with midlife themes. My first book was about men at midlife, and anyway, so it went on from there. But you'll be able to read about each of them and see which ones you like and what you're drawn toward. JohnRobinson.org.
And so, what are some of your plans beyond your writing? Do you have these support groups that you put together now, or do you teach classes?
I'm about to do a webinar on aging through the Creation Spirituality group on the East Coast. So that'll be available. I'll probably put that on my website if people are interested. I'm just starting a group through a local church for aging folks who want to do this kind of inner work, and discover what aging can be all about. But it's so funny. As I move into this stage and go deeper into this consciousness, I'm not as ambitious as I used to be. I kind of feel like.
Isn't that interesting? I like to hear that. Yeah, that's interesting, and I've noticed it too.
Yeah, I don't really care so much about that stuff. I think maybe I've written everything I need to have written. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just at a quiet time, or feel like I'm sort of on a little rowboat, kind of flowing down the stream, and I'm just content with what is.
Well, you have to realize one thing, though, John. You yourself are a mentor.
I am. I love that role.
You're mentoring this wisdom stage.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really awesome, and I'm so glad that we could connect with you this time. Thank you so much, John.
Me too. Oh, thank you so much, Renee. It's been a real pleasure. We had a lot of fun.
We did.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Okie doke.
Bye.
Bye.